Welcome, everybody, to Dolphins Brawl. We're here for yet another episode, and let me tell you what, I am absolutely super excited because we have finally something to discuss that is actually fun because they just beat the New England Patriots in Foxborough in December for the first time since 2000. No, not even in December. The first time, period, since 2008. And not only did we beat them in December, where the Patriots are pretty much invincible, with probably the worst, least talented team that any team has fielded in God knows how long, a decade, or longer than that. Like, I'm still trying to process everything that I just saw. Because this is not a team that should have won. This is a team that should have been laughed right out of the stadium and not even talk about this problem ever again. We were bracing ourselves to look back on this and just pretend it never happened, just a bad memory that we'd hate to remember. But no, we're here celebrating because not only did the Dolphins beat the Patriots, they actually managed to knock them into the wild card for the first time since 2009. They don't get a first round bye, and not only that, it gets better, folks. According to what we're hearing, they get to keep the 5th overall pick, so their draft spot didn't even go down. Like, can you imagine a better set of circumstances than that? I'm trying to figure it out, and quite frankly, I'm not coming up with anything. I suppose that some people would probably say, oh, well, they could have had the 1st overall pick if they had just lost to the Bengals and blah, 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 blah. You know what? Screw that. Seriously, screw it. I don't care. I have never cared about this whole idea of tanking. I hated it from the start. I've always been on the side of the Jason Taylor situation, which is I hate losing more than I love winning. And this whole season was supposed to be about losing. They haven't lost that much, or at least not as much as we were expecting. The Dolphins were expected to win a big fat 0. None. Nothing. And they've won 5. And the last one was against the Patriots. I'll probably just talk about this. Like, you need to tell me something, Chad, because I'm at the point where it's like if I don't stop, I'm just going to keep repeating myself over and over again. Tell me something.
It's amazing. I mean, I'm with you on that, Lewis. I mean, you're talking about a game the Patriots absolutely needed to win. I mean, this took away a first-round bye for them in the playoffs. It makes the road to the Super Bowl much, much more difficult for New England. And it was a game in which, yeah, on paper, this was supposed to be one of the worst Dolphins teams ever. And now we're at 5 wins on the season. And all you can do is just attribute to coaching. This team got better and better throughout the year. They adjusted well in the game. They developed players. Everything we've been wanting, we've been seeing. So I couldn't think of a better way to go into the offseason to knock the division rival Patriots down in a crucial game for them. There's so many narratives flying around the game. Part of me is like, is this the last time the Dolphins are going to face Tom Brady in a Patriots uniform? It's a legitimate question. I don't know if he'll be back in New England. If at all, he may even retire. So it's a huge win for the Dolphins. It's a difficult loss for the Patriots because not only did we beat them on their home stadium in the last game of the year, but we did it with a lot of their coaching staff that is now our coaching staff. Eric Rowe had a pick 6 off Tom Brady, who was their player. That can't be easy for them to be watching that happen, and nothing but upticks for us. I mean, talk about finishing the year strong. We've got all these draft picks, all this cap space. And this coaching staff just won 5 games with guys off the street. I mean, there's no other way to say that. We beat a very good football team with guys off the street. That's coaching. So I'm excited, Lewis. I'm still a little just like in shock that it happened, but it happened. You know, we just beat the Patriots on their home turf in a crucial game for the playoffs. I mean, it's incredible.
And you know what? I used the term misfits. That's what I had used when I said that this team managed to do what they did. Because, and I have some people mad at me about using the term misfits, and somebody suggested Bravehearts. I like that better, Bravehearts, because you know what? These guys were a bunch of underdogs, XFL, CFL, undrafted free agent rookie kids who don't even expect to be on they may not even be on a roster next year. That's how little the talent actually was. And I didn't mean it as an insult, but I guess some people took it that way. But you know what? In a manner of speaking, it really was like this whole the island of misfit toys came together to knock out one of the league's heavy hitters. The New England Patriots, no matter how bad they ever get, is always one of the league's best teams. It's like year in and year out, it's always the same. We had, what is it, Nate Brooks and Tay Hayes as your cornerbacks. Nick Needham was in there, but it was like these guys were there too. You had I didn't even hear the name Nate Sealer today. So, or is it Nate Sealer? Or I can't even remember his name anymore because that's like it's hard.
It's hard
to remember. It's like there's always a new guy every week. There's a new guy. What's the name? Sajin Parias, is that his name? Another running back. I mean, you name it. There's like. That's why I said what I said. But you know what? And it's true, though. And that's what makes this even more incredible, that they were actually able to beat Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots at home in December with these guys. That's unheard of. Unheard of. Like, even if it had been last year's team with Robert Quinn and Tannehill and Kenyon Drake and all these supposedly really good players, if we had managed to beat them in December on their home turf, we would have been shocked beyond belief. And they did this with these guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament to coaching. I mean, I've never seen anything like it, Lewis. Not just this game, but the 5 wins, because we have a terrible offensive line, and I know that's I mean, no disrespect.
That's the story of our life.
We have well, I mean, we've had some bad lines, but we effectively cannot run the football at all. I mean, at all. Like, look at our running stats. There's a reason Ryan Fitzpatrick's our leading rusher. We cannot run the football, and we're still winning games. It's unbelievable, and we're playing not bad. Like, our defense has not played bad, and Xavier Howard gone, Rashad Jones gone. I mean,
Bobby McCain gone,
and we're doing this with guys. And I'm just telling you, these Flores is a really good defensive back coaches, and he's just literally taking whatever they give him and turning them into decent defenders. I'm really, really excited to see what this staff does when they're given a bunch of talent. It's really, really exciting. It obviously feels good to finally spoil something for the Patriots. I think it's not just us. I mean, I've had texts today from lots of Chiefs fans saying, thank you, Dolphins. You know, we just gave the Chiefs the bye with that win, and I don't think anybody saw this coming.
No,
absolutely nobody saw this coming.
Do you remember a few years ago when all the analysts came together and you saw the long line of like top NFL analysts who all said that New England was going to win the game against the Dolphins to open the season? Like, that's what it felt like today, like in spades. Like, the Dolphins were not even a. What is it it's a line from MASH. An inflamed boil on the buttocks of the world. That's what they considered the Dolphins. It's like, well, it just came back to bite you. So, again, I should say again, because they lost that game too. But yeah, man, if there was ever any doubt about the coaching staff, any lingering doubt, I don't know how you can doubt it anymore. Because I had one guy come to me and said, listen, they still haven't won a meaningful game and they don't have a quarterback. Okay, maybe the quarterback part is true, because I love Ryan Fitzpatrick, and at this point I want him back because of everything he's done this year, but he's definitely not the franchise guy. He's 38 years old. He's not going to be the quarterback of the next 10 years. That's just not going to happen. But as far as a meaningful game goes, this was it. This was the meaningful game. Because this is Brian Flores coming home to New England and beating his former mentor, I guess you could say, in Bill Belichick. He brought Chad O'Shea with him to be the offensive coordinator. And this team has a lot of New England cast-offs on it. Eric Rowe is one of them. Jamal Wiltz is one of them. I don't even think Wiltz played, actually, now that I think about it. I didn't hear his name once the whole game.
Yeah, it's interesting. heroes one week literally not even be dressing the next week sometimes. It's interesting to see how many changes this coaching staff was making. And yeah, I can't say enough. I mean, the Patriots, there was a while there in the game where they were using the trap game a lot, successfully running the football, and we adjusted. There's no way an Adam Gase team would have adjusted to what they was doing. And you start to realize that we have a competent coaching staff. It's the first time in a long time that we do, and so it's exciting, Lewis. I mean, it's one of those things where finally we beat those guys there, and we kind of got that monkey off our back. And I'm with you. Obviously Ryan Fitzpatrick's not the future, but what a great quarterback to have for whether it's Rosen next year or whether we get a rookie. Because I just don't think he cares that much about if he's the starter or what his stats are. I think he just is showing up. The guys love him. He's playing football, and you couldn't have a better bridge quarterback on the team. You know, it kind of reminds me of Don Strock, if you want to go way back when Marino was coming, and it's just one of those quarterbacks who he's not caught up on needing to be the starter. You know, everybody's talking about all the free agent quarterbacks this offseason. That's the expectation for all of them. You know, you want a Cam Newton or a Carr or any of these free agent quarterbacks. They all want to start, and they want assurances. They want a long-term deal. Mm-hmm. And we've got a quarterback that's like, oh, I'm good. You know, if I play a game, I'm fine. If I play all year, I'm fine. So he's perfect situation to bring a young quarterback along. And he really did put this team on his back on several times. I mean, just to think about the offensive line Ryan Fitzpatrick's playing with and the running game non-existent, and how effective he was at getting Devontae Parker the ball. It was
and
really
Mike Gesicki.
This probably without question was Ryan Fitzpatrick's best year of his whole career. It probably really was.
And you know what, man? Well, I won't say that it's his best game because there was like his 400-yard, 4-touchdown performance when he was with the Bucks. So, like, I'll say that one was better. But as far as what was more meaningful, definitely this one.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know, man. And you know what? What's funny is that when we first got him and we first heard all about this, it was like the whole point of him coming here was because he was told that he would be the starter. And then we got Rosen, and we thought, oh, now Fitz is going to be like, oh, he doesn't want to sit down. He doesn't want to be the backup. He wants to compete for the job. And he did, and he even said that in camp. He said that I'm here to compete for the starting job. So it's not like, oh, I'm just going to sit back and let the young guy play. No, that wasn't it. I thought for a while that it was like if Rosen starts, then Fitzpatrick is going to be like off-put because it's like, oh, okay, well, what happened? You told me I was going to be the starter. Now what?
Yeah.
But no. And you just watching throughout the season, this guy just loves football. Like he doesn't play football he's like one of those guys who doesn't play football for the money. He doesn't play it for the prestige. He just loves football. You can see it on his face. You can see it in the way that he does things. He just loves it. And that's the kind of passion that not only Flores is looking for, but you just want that. Fans should want that on your football team. You want a guy that loves football so much that he's willing to put everything on the line just to be able to play the game he loves. That's Ryan Fitzpatrick in a nutshell. He takes off running, he scores and dives into the end zone for touchdowns, and he laughs with his teammates after he's done it. He chases down the ball boy to make sure that Myles Gaskin gets his first NFL touchdown football. I love this guy now. I don't want him to leave. It's like, if Jim Caldwell doesn't come back as the quarterback's coach, after Fitzpatrick retires, I'm be like, hey, stay here and be the guy who does that from now on. Don't ever leave here again.
Yeah, he'll either stay or retire. I don't think Fitzpatrick's going to leave and go somewhere else. And he's under contract anyway.
Yeah, he's under contract.
I can't imagine.
I don't think he wants to retire. I think he wants to stay.
No, I agree. But I think that the astounding thing is I really don't think, like, if we went into next season and they named Josh Rosen the starter, I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick would be a problem at all. I think he'd be completely fine. He'd probably be joking around on the sidelines having fun knowing him. So, it's a really impressive thing. And, again, I just keep circling back to the coaching staff. You remember a year ago, how many people were just screaming for just cut Devontae Parker, just cut him. Like, they didn't even want anything in return. They just wanted him gone. And Devontae Parker 4-year contract, and what does he do? He comes in today as 137 yards receiving. He tore
Against
the whole
Stephon
league up.
Gilmore.
Yeah, he tore the whole league up the second half of the season. So I feel pretty good about paying him. How about Mike Gesicki?
Mm-hmm.
You know, people are like, oh, he's a bust. Touchdown today, 34 yards. He seems like he's come along pretty well in the second half of the season. That's coaching. Isaiah Ford, how long has he been on the team, Lewis? 3 years? 4 years? Like,
3 years, cut on and off, practice squad on and off. The poor guy, he's Rashard Matthews.
Today.
He's Rashard Matthews, except he gets to play.
He's 7 catches today, 54 yards. That's coaching again, getting him involved, using him to his strengths. So it's, like I said, people have come along. They've developed a lot of people, and it feels like they're giving, how about Rowe? Like, they give him a contract. What's he do? He immediately gets a pick six today in response. It just feels like we finally have people that are running the show that know what they're doing, and it feels really good because we've been through some really rough coaching staffs.
Rough coaching staffs. Understatement of the century, man. Seriously.
Oh,
Joe Philbin, and then we thought we had something in Gase, and then he turned out to be a arrogant son of a who can't stay out of his own way and says, I'm bleeping rich to the media when they basically criticize him. I knew New York was going to eat him. So, oh my God. Finally, a coach who knows what they're doing. Yeah. It's like I can't stop smiling, man. I can't. It's so you know how they say that, the Dolphins' job is to sell hope, and they sell you hope, but don't get your hopes up. I'm hopeful. Look at what's going on. I'm hopeful. I have more hope than I've ever had in my whole life about this team.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing what they've been able to accomplish with these guys. You know what? And it's just, there's arrow up signs everywhere. Van Ginkel had a really good game today.
Andrew Van Ginkel. There's another one.
Yeah. I mean, he's a later round draft pick, and he's been injured, and looks like he's solid. And I mean, if you would have said with the lineup we have, if they were going to have a base of players to start to work with, I mean, I think everybody was thinking, well, that was really foolish giving Devontae Parker that contract a year ago. That didn't seem too foolish now.
No, you know what? I was one of those ones like, we re-signed him? Why?
But that was his staff. Look at him.
But that was the staff. They knew.
We want to keep him here. Yeah, they recognized it. And, it's just everywhere is looking up right now for this team. And we definitely need to work on our offensive line and defensive line probably. But we've got a lot of resources to do it. This team can get better really fast. And, a lot of these games were close. This team was not that far off. It really wasn't for what they were working with. So.
Yeah, that's the scary thing. You know what, Chad? Seriously, a few more things go their way, we could have been wild card contenders.
Yeah,
it's
crazy. Crazy to think about. It really is. But I look around the league, and I touched on this last week with teams that have really underperformed, like the Cleveland Browns and San Diego Chargers, and those teams have lots of huge contracts and cap they're dealing with, and players they've selected really high draft picks into, and they're wondering, do we need to start over? And for a rebuilding year, 5 wins feels pretty damn good. You know what I mean?
A rebuilding year, that's what it was supposed to be. The tanking season, 0-16, first overall pick. Here we come, baby. 5-11. 5-11.
I think we finally have got a staff. So, and that, it's the quarterbacks are important and your talent is important, but it's about coaching. There's a reason the Patriots have been good for so long. There's a reason the Saints are pretty good. Yes, Drew Brees and Tom Brady factor into that,
but they haven't been there all the time. Matt Castle, Teddy Bridgewater, there are times when they're not there.
Yeah, Ravens, John Harbaugh. That's a big part of the reason those teams are always in the playoff races, and in the playoffs they're really well coached. And I feel like we're starting to get into that direction finally, and have coaching as an asset, not as a weakness.
It's such a refreshing concept. Okay, so with that in mind, now that we've recapped the season and how our thoughts on it are, so let's discuss this. You wanted to talk about this. You told me about this before we got started. So let's talk about the whole Albert Wilson situation, and we'll kind of carry that into other players that should they return or not. So Albert Wilson, pretty much all year long, he's been like you could tell that there was something still not right about him. Like even still halfway through the season, he was still not the same guy. He was barely on the field. Allen Hurns usually spent more time on the field than he did, but these past couple of weeks, well, not today because he was not all that great today. He dropped a lot of really important passes, but I digress. He's starting to look more like himself. The speed, the agility, the ability to make defenders miss. That was the Albert Wilson we fell in love with back in 2018. So now I'll go ahead and ask you, since this was pretty much your topic, do you think Albert Wilson should come back, given that what is it he's going to get, like a $9 million price tag on his cap space?
Yeah, that was. I was looking at players that may not be back, and the number one player I think probably going to go is Rashad Jones. He just wasn't that involved this year. He has a huge cap number, and that we can save quite a bit of cap space by parting ways with Rashad Jones. And we're into that same situation with Albert Wilson. Now, they featured him the last few weeks, so that's why it's been interesting to me. And I have to think this is in part due to they want to know, do we want to pay this guy $9.5 million next year or not? And so I think you're right, Lewis. I think he's spent a lot of this year still trying to get his hip right, and I think he's finally getting back into that full health, I think he's finally into that state maybe. But, $9.5 million is a lot of money right now. And just because we have cap space doesn't mean we need to be foolish with it. And so that's the big question. Devontae Parker obviously has become the number one wide receiver. We're going to be getting Preston Williams back. And so I have to think those are going to be our two outside, big wide receivers. And so they re-signed Hurns, I believe, this season, and they also extended Jakeem Grant. And so that's a lot of receivers under contract right now coming into next year that seem very likely to be on this team. And so I have been kind of wondering, where is Albert Wilson going to fall in? And here he dropped some critical passes today, you're right, on big plays. They overcame it, but I don't know. My gut feeling still thinks they're going to part ways with him, Lewis. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't think he's performing up to his contract. Unless he's willing to restructure, I think they may go in a different direction considering the number of receivers they have on the roster that are under contract.
When I first did my offseason plan, I had Wilson leaving so that the Dolphins could sign Amari Cooper. But that was with the idea that Devontae Parker was not going to be sticking around. The idea was that Parker would leave and Cooper would be here and he would be the one to be with Preston Williams. But now that Parker has suddenly become a superstar, is it too late to extend him again? Seriously. Oh, no, wait. No, he signed a 4-year deal. No, it's okay. We're good. Yep. We're good.
We did.
Yeah,
we did extend him again.
I just remembered. It's like, oh, yeah, they already did. Okay, never mind. Cross that off. So we're good on that front. We don't need Amari Cooper anymore. But that would mean that we have Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, who I guess now we can say his ceiling is Devontae Parker. That's kind of scary when you think about it. Allen Hurns, he signed a 2-year deal, but quite honestly, if we really wanted to, I think we could probably get out of that deal pretty easily. So,
yeah, the Hurns deal is not a big guaranteed deal.
Yeah,
so they could part.
Yeah, I'm not calling Hurns could easily be shipped off if necessary. Jakeem Grant, he's a little harder to get rid of. Plus, he's like the last, because let's say this is the thing that I'm thinking about here. Yes, it's nice to have size, but you need some kind of like really blistering speed out there too. So you can't dump Grant and Wilson in one fell swoop. You need to keep somebody.
No. They're not, and Grant's not. I would say 75% of the reason that he signed that contract is he's our primary returner, and Jakeem Grant's an excellent kick returner, and so. Albert Wilson, I don't know, has he ever returned kicks? I don't know if I've ever seen him return kicks.
No, he's been the wide receiver guy. He's a faster Jarvis Landry. That's what he is. So that's the question. Do you think a faster Jarvis Landry is worth $9.5 million? Because I think regular Jarvis Landry is actually making more than that.
Well, I don't think this team runs that offense. So it's hard to say. This isn't a heavy wide receiver screen offense like Adam Gase likes to run. So I have to think what we're wanting more of is a guy that's really good in short area routes, slants, outs, like historically Patriots. They have the Wes Welkers, the Julian Edelmans, those type of receivers. And so I kind of feel like we've got these big talented receivers now with Devontae Parker and Preston Williams, along with Gesicki. We've got some real tall, fast guys, and so I have to think they want some faster, really accomplished route runners in the slot that have real reliable hands. I don't know if that's the right.
That's
fit.
not Grant though.
No, like I said, I would just always slot Grant as your number 5 receiver. I don't think you're going to see Jakeem Grant come in and be a high catch wide receiver in this offense. I think he's primarily the returner, and they'll work him in some, but I don't think that's their plan, is for Jakeem Grant to be on the field a ton on the offense. I think they view him as a guy who you can work in a few plays that identify some good mismatches for him, but otherwise, he's your kick returner. It's not like they gave Jakeem Grant this monster deal. They gave him a solid deal. And this is, again, a front office that's suddenly being smart. How often were we way overpaying a free agent to get? How many times did we let our own players' contracts expire and then let them hit the open market and then try to re-sign them? And you're seeing this right now. Like, the reason they signed Jakeem Grant is Jakeem Grant, was drafted as a lower round draft pick. So he has never made any real big money in the NFL. And so it's one of those things where, like, look, you can play another year or two and risk having your career ended on injury, or we'll pay you a decent rate right now. And, for somebody like Jakeem Grant, he's made himself set himself for life, in the sense he's made several $1 million on his contract. But for the team, it's a team-friendly deal that works out for both parties. And that's what we should have been doing for years with these guys like Jarvis Landry. When they're in year 3 or 4 of a 4 or 5 year contract, sign them then. Get the deal done. Get it a little more realistic. Get those guys paid a little bit sooner. And it's all about cap space, Lewis. Like, we have never, for a decade, this team was always maneuvering, trying to create cap space. How many times were we releasing people in the offseason to create more cap space, only to chase the circle around again, trying to overpay somebody way too much? And what happens is those guys are on the open market. They need to make their big money, those big paydays. But if you just do the math, if you pay a guy a little bit sooner, if you have a guy on a rookie deal who's making peanuts, if you just pay him a year or two in advance, he almost makes the same amount of money than if he waits 2 more years and then tries to hit the open market for the huge contract, because he's making that extra money that 2 years in advance. And so it's just smart economics. It's smart business management that our team's doing now. And yeah, I've been pretty impressed. People have been negative on Grier because he was around the team, when Tannenbaum and those guys were making moves, but I really don't think that was Grier the one making those moves. And he's been really shrewd at acquiring draft picks, getting good contracts in place. And so I feel pretty good, right now that they decided to sign Devontae Parker, what they've turned him into. The guys they signed as free agents off the street that ended up being decent players. It's just a lot of good things going on.
And I think that's something that Chris Grier doesn't get enough credit for. Seriously, this everybody remembers, like, oh, what's his draft class been? Isn't he the one who signed Charles Harris? Yeah, he's the one who drafted Charles Harris. Isn't he the one who drafted this guy? Yeah, he's the one who drafted this guy. Like, I get the whole concept of the track record. I do. I really do. Because not all GMs have the best reputation. Like Jeff Ireland, for instance. He's league wide known as a terrible GM, great scout, terrible GM. So I get that in that sense, that you don't trust Chris Grier's ability to draft people. But again, remember, what we have to keep in mind is that this is what the coaching staff was. You keep bringing it up. It's like, this is the coaching doing this, the coaching doing this, the coaching doing that. All that matters. Yes, Charles Harris was and is a bust. No denying it. Name me one team who's never had a first round bust in their little careers. Name me one GM, like not even the Ravens GM for all those years is perfect. Ozzie Newsome. He's not perfect. He was not perfect. He's not perfect. He's had some moments where it's like, probably should have picked this other guy. It happens. So now, this is what I find funny, is like, even if the Dolphins did get the first overall pick, let's say this for a second. If you mistrust Grier that much, and you think Flores is not the guy, what makes you think the difference between 1 and 5 is going to make that much of a difference?
Not. I mean, the Patriots have consistently been
bottom of the tier in the draft. Yes.
Low end of the draft for the last 2 decades, and they continue to win because of coaching and player development. Mm-hmm. And that to me, that's your number one thing. That was the reason Miami was good for so long with Shula. They were always picking later in the drafts than those, but they were a winning team every year because of coaching. And so, yeah, absolutely, they're the number one factor to having successful drafts and successful seasons is good coaching. I think more than personnel evaluations, it's how once you give the coach and staff those players, what do they do with them?
Correct. That's what I think too, and that's important to think about, and that's important to discuss, because now with the Dolphins picking 5, you have a situation where Joe Burrow definitely out. You're not going to get your hands on Chase Young, who admittedly was kind of a non-factor against LSU, so there's something to consider there, just keeping it in mind. You're probably not going to get your hands on Jeffrey Okudah, who's like the the number 1 cornerback in this upcoming draft. So that leaves you with potentially a left tackle. That leaves you with potentially Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson, who's like a bigger, stronger Minkah Fitzpatrick. So what's your move here? So, and of course there is the other option that we could consider that most people I think are still hoping for, drafting the injured Tua Tagovailoa, which at this point
I think there's got a lot to play out. I mean, he's going to have to declare, which is a real question if he's going to actually declare. Even with Chase Young, he hasn't actually declared to the NFL either. So I think most people assume he probably will, but it's interesting because, quarterback might be, and I have to preface might be a need, because I don't know if this staff's done with Rosen or not. And it's going to be interesting to see how he plays next year, because you guys, Josh Rosen, I think, is younger than Joe Burrow.
Yeah, Rosen's still only 22 years old. Go figure.
Yeah, and so it's not like, he's not a good quarterback prospect. And so I don't know if this team's even worried about it. But if you look at the draft, I don't think there's any choice but to take Burrow number 1 overall for somebody right now because of how
Cincy. They're going to take Joe Burrow for sure. They don't want Andy Dalton and Ryan Finley one more time.
Oh, no. That I agree with, Lewis. But it is tempting. Is Joe Burrow the answer to make Cincinnati a lot better?
Okay, I see what you're saying. You're saying somebody might trade up and give them a whole truckload of everything to get Joe Burrow?
They could. And I'm just saying, if Miami really wants Burrow, it's not that far out of the question, because I think who the Bengals may want is Chase Young. But how do you not take Burrow when you need a quarterback and he's the number 1 prospect? But Young's Ohio State. He's in the same state, so he's going to have a huge fan following. And which is the safer player? Is Burrow is he a safer player to draft than Chase Young? I would say it's not even close. Yes, Burrow's been lighting up college football, but college football's quarterbacks making the jump to the NFL is a risky proposition. It's like flipping a coin. Whether or not Joe Burrow is going to be a stud in the NFL is really an unknown. Chase Young, on the other hand, he's going to be a dominant player if he's healthy no matter what. He just is going to. He's so talented. And so he's a much safer player for a team like the Bengals to take if they can get more capital out of that pick. And so, yes, if you're not going to take any other considerations, you got to take Joe Burrow and not Chase Young if you're the Bengals. However, change that equation to be, what about Chase Young and a 2nd and a 3rd round pick? Or do you take Joe Burrow? What is the better situation for the Bengals, who has a lot of holes? And with the Miami Dolphins, who do we have in front of us right now in the draft? You've got the Giants, I believe, right? The Redskins?
Giants, Redskins.
Maybe Detroit?
I think we're ahead of the Lions because they won.
Oh, okay. So I'm not clear. I'll have to look at who's in front of us. But I don't think there was a team in front of us other than the Bengals that even would be interested in drafting a quarterback. I can't see the Redskins going after a quarterback after just using their number 1 pick. Same with the Giants.
I think it's the Jets. I think the Jets are ahead of us.
And so if it is the Jets, they're not either. All those teams just drafted quarterbacks. And so if Miami wants to make a deal, like maybe Miami jumps up, makes a deal with the Giants, and the Giants are more than happy to drop back to the 5th overall pick for a second round pick, for example. That's not a big jump to go from 5 to 2.
Okay, wait. So hold on. Are you saying that the Bengals won't pick Burrow?
I'm saying the Bengals might be more interested in getting some more draft capital in Chase Young versus Burrow. Now,
well, if you're going to get Chase Young, you'd have to be number 2, like no question, because that's the way things are going. It's either going to be Young and Burrow or Burrow and Young. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. No one's going to pick a left tackle or a corner over one of those.
No, I agree, Louis. I'm making the point that the teams in front of Miami right now, other than the Bengals, don't need a quarterback. And so for them, they might be fine dropping back to the 5th spot in this draft with the Dolphins for not a ton of capital.
Oh, okay. So basically a bargain basement trade because they don't necessarily
even
want
that.
Burrow.
I mean, if you're the Giants, let's say, and unless you're really enamored with Chase Young, maybe they are, and they want to try to get him. But for like a second, like let's say you're the Giants and Miami calls you up and say, will you be willing to drop back 3 spots in the draft for an additional second round pick? That's a pretty good offer for the Giants to fall back 3 slots, still get a premier player and get an extra second round draft pick. Now in that spot, Miami's now number 2 in the draft. Now you talk to the Bengals and say, hey, are you guys set on Burrow? Because we'll give you one of our first round picks if you let us swap spots with you. And now if you're the Bengals, now you're getting an additional number 1 pick and Chase Young to drop back a spot. And so that starts to become, wow, that's the point I'm making. Yes, if you're not accumulating any picks, you take Joe Burrow over Chase Young if you're the Bengals. But my point is, what if you get a number 1 pick plus Chase Young versus Joe Burrow? What do you do? So that's I'm pointing out Miami has plenty of ways to move up if they really want Burrow to make a move for him, because I was saying, the Bengals I think may want Chase Young, but they don't have much of a choice but to take the quarterback. But Young's a much safer pick. He's really talented and he's in state, and the team needs a lot more than Joe Burrow right now. The Bengals do. To get their program turned around. And so they may decide, maybe they really like Herbert, something like that, but they can't take him number 1. If they really like him, there's a lot to play out yet in this draft, and Miami's still in really good position with all the draft capital they have. But I don't know. The Tua thing, it's going to be interesting, Louis, because if you're a team right now, Miami can do it because they have the extra picks, right? We have 3 first-round picks. But if you're not Miami and you've got 1 first-round pick, how comfortable are you giving that pick up right now for a guy who very likely may not be able to play at all next year for you? Most teams aren't going to give up a high number 1 pick for a guy that probably is not going to be able to play for him for that year. Whereas Miami, you might be able to get Tua like in the middle to late half of the first, because teams are going to be wary of his injury. But Miami can be like, yeah, we'll bring Fitzpatrick and Rosen back next year. Maybe we use like the Steelers' first-round pick and we take Tua and we just put him in the quarterback room for the year and let him rehab at his own pace and learn, and just go from there. So I don't think Miami's going to take Tua. If nobody moves around, I don't see them taking Tua with the 5th overall pick, though. I really just don't see them doing it.
I don't know, man, because it's quarterbacks, and you know how it is with quarterbacks. I know what you're saying, and to some extent I agree with you, because like the idea of using your 5th overall pick on a quarterback who likely will not play for you until 2021 at the earliest, that's hard to swallow, because there's going to be players, elite prospects, that will be available at that pick. Even if it's not like the most wow-worthy one, it's still an elite prospect nonetheless.
Yes.
But at the same time, you are gambling when you do that. For whatever it's worth, and like we know that mock drafts are not like the end-all, say-all of what's exactly going to happen, because mock drafts from the last 2 seasons have been like wildly off from whatever actually did happen. But every mock draft that I've ever done, it feels like every time I try to get my hands on Tua in the middle, he's always picked before I can get to him. Like the Panthers will pick him up, or another team that needs a quarterback that goes ahead of Miami's second pick. That's
my point though. So the thing the Dolphins capitalized on in personnel moves was the NFL is desperate to win now, and so
the NFL in general.
Just any team in the NFL, if you're a head coach or you're a general manager, your window to win is very tight. And so this year, we talked about this as Flores is like he was not expected to win this year. He was way more successful than anticipated, but they were able to make personnel moves that were designed to benefit this team in the coming years. It wasn't designed to try to help this team win immediately. It was what's in the best interest of this team long term. Going into this draft, that's going to be the majority again. So if you're a team that needs a quarterback, right, a quarterback needy team, Tua is not your answer. Like if you're a head coach or you're a GM, Tua's probably not going to do much for you until 2021. So do you have that buffer to use that high a pick on a quarterback and maybe not have a successful 2020 campaign? Because you need, in this day and age, your number one pick needs to play and produce right away in this league. If you're drafting a number one pick that's for the future, usually you're now around long enough to see that happen. And so that's when you start looking at teams and who's going to be willing to draft Tua that has the luxury to do it, that has the luxury to use a really high pick on a guy that you're not counting on to play this year. I don't see the teams out there. Now, a team that's going to do that is a team that has the quarterback now, like a team like the New Orleans Saints or the New England Patriots or maybe the San Diego Chargers.
Well, because Brady's going to be a free agent, so maybe they won't have Brady.
Assuming. But I'm using examples as teams that have quarterbacks they know are towards the end of their career in the last year or two. Those are teams that have probably the idea that, you know what, we'll draft Tua because we know by 2021 we need that young starter. We'll take him right now. But if you're a team that doesn't really have a starter at all, that's tough, because where are you going to get your starter? Let's say you're going to sign a Cam Newton or something like that. Cam Newton's going to demand a 4-year monster contract, and so look at the teams like Jacksonville with Foles and the teams like the Vikings with Kirk Cousins. It's pretty tough to pay those massive deals and draft Tua with that at the same time. That's a lot of resources to give up at a position that may not help you win immediately. So, I know he's mocking all over. I just feel like Tua isn't going to go super high in this draft. I think he's going to be a first-round pick. And I think as you start to get into the teens, there's going to be somebody that might be willing, that has maybe a more stable quarterback situation that feels comfortable grabbing him. Ironically, a team maybe like the Steelers would have, but we have that pick. So that may be the right pick to use to get Tua. It really might be.
I don't know. My issue with Tua was never about Tua himself. It was always about the cult following that he had. This idea that we're crowning him the king of the Dolphins' future without him actually touching the field yet. But now that it's like, okay, he's going to have some time to sit down, we have some time to be patient, and we have some time to build the team around what he would do, now I'm more receptive to it just because we're not expecting an instant turnaround. We're basically forcing him. Sit your butt down on the bench, a la Patrick Mahomes. Learn the game and the speed of how everything goes, and then you can go out there and try your best. Now I'm more receptive to Tua in that regard because it's like we're letting things happen as they come, and we're not forcing it. But
it's interesting. I'll say this, though, Lewis. I see the reports out there that say he's expected to make a full recovery.
Yeah,
that's completely not realistic. I'm not saying he won't recover enough to play football, but if you've ever broken anything, you've broken your foot, you've broken your hand, you've broken your arm.
I can honestly say I have not broken anything, so I don't know. Have you?
I can tell you this: I haven't, but I've been around a lot of people that have medically, and it's never the same. If you break something, it's never quite the same. And I think the chances of you re-injuring it start to increase. And so am I saying Tua will not be able to play football again? No. But what I am saying is that would not be, to me, a true statement that his hip is going to be completely the same as it was before he injured it. I would imagine he has a higher risk of re-injuring it. I would imagine he has a much higher risk of having complications like arthritis or degenerative disorders related to it. And I think that's something you got to take into consideration because Tua, in my mind, he throws a really pretty ball. He has a really nice arm, but he has never been this amazing athlete as a quarterback anyway. I mean, did you watch the Clemson Ohio State game at all? Did you see Trevor Lawrence's touchdown run?
Yeah, everybody was like getting on the bandwagon, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that Tua's not an athlete. Like, remember, I'm the guy who mistakenly called him a running quarterback because every highlight reel I've ever seen of him like shows him taking off and running. It to some extent. So,
well, I'll say this: I don't think Tua is anywhere in the neighborhood of an athlete of like a Trevor Lawrence or a Josh Allen on the Bills. Absolutely not Lamar Jackson. But
he's definitely a better passer than them.
I don't know.
Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, yes, he's a better passer.
I don't know. I mean, I like his arm, but I'm just saying he's not that big, number one.
That he's not. That he's definitely not.
I question, like, will that hurt him visually? Like, how well will he do in the NFL with the ability to see with his height? How physically capable is he of absorbing more punishment? Because he's had some injury issues at Alabama.
Yes, he's busted both his ankles. He has a knee injury, and now his hip.
Yep, and the guys are all bigger, faster, stronger in the NFL. And so that's another legitimate question is, can he hold up? Can his body, is it physically built to hold up to the kind of physical punishment you're going to take in the NFL? And so you throw all those questions around, and you still have the Josh Rosen question out there where he's a pretty good athlete. He's got all the intangibles. We don't know what his development's been like in practice, but I really would not be shocked if Miami's priority, if quarterback isn't that big of a concern for them right now, versus like getting their offensive line put together, getting some running backs in the building. I don't know how worried they are about quarterback. And so I just think people are all assuming that Miami have to take a quarterback with that 5th overall pick, whether it's Herbert or Tua, or try to trade up to get Burrow. I don't know if that's Miami's priority. I really don't.
And you know what? I'm pretty sure that it's not Miami's priority. There have been reports coming out that basically say the Dolphins are not looking at a quarterback right now. They're not being urgent about a quarterback. There are reports that are saying they should be, like you were saying, like they should be looking for a quarterback, but they don't. I don't think that that's their priority right now. And but you know what? In some regard, I feel like that's for the best. Because while people are saying that you have to take a quarterback every year until you find it, yes, I would take a quarterback. I would not make it your first pick if you're not absolutely sure that this is your guy. Like, for all the hype that was around Jameis Winston that failed, Marcus Mariota that failed, Ryan Tannehill to some extent that failed, like, but all at the time, those guys were like, this guy can be made into something special. And they've shown flashes of that. Mariota has shown flashes. Winston has shown flashes. Tannehill has shown flashes. RG3 for his first year was one of the best quarterbacks in football until he got hurt. Then things fell off the rails. Andrew Luck, another one. He didn't really pan out to the multiple Super Bowl winning champion that the Colts thought he would be, but he was a really darn good quarterback. So, but all those guys were guys that they had a conviction about. It was never a, well, maybe, maybe not. Then that's the problem with this whole quarterback class. They're talented. But if none of these guys are good enough that you think that's the guy, we can do it and we can make it work, then I don't see the point in picking them first. Because more than likely, like we're talking about Justin Herbert a lot. Justin Herbert is like one of the consensus top 5 QBs. Okay, that's fine. Maybe even the top 3 of them. So it would be Burrow, Tua, and Herbert, probably in that order. Like the way that people still look at Tua, Herbert is probably number 3 still on that list, with Tua number 2, just because Burrow got the chance to win the Heisman and do all those incredible things, put up 55 points against Oklahoma. So it's the question now that you have to ask is, when is it okay to draft a quarterback? And at what point do you try to go for Jordan Love in the middle of the first round and let him sit like Patrick Mahomes? Because Jordan Love has all the physical tools you could ever want. You just kind of fix some of his mechanics and stuff and make sure that he's doing what he needs to do as far as like his accuracy, what he's looking at on the field, that kind of stuff. Because Patrick Mahomes at first he didn't just get drafted and immediately take off and run. He was sitting on the bench for a whole year behind Alex Smith before he managed to get out there. So if
but here's the thing, Lewis, is you have quarterbacks, but is Patrick Mahomes, would he be the same somewhere else? I'm not taking anything away. He's been a great quarterback, but how much of Patrick Mahomes becoming what he is was attributed to Andy Reid? I mean, Andy Reid is one of the best offensive minds in the league. He's proven it year in and year out for a long time.
That's a question a lot of people ask, Chad. But like, here's the thing, though. This is why I think about Mahomes in the sense that he would have. I don't know if he would have been as good. Maybe he would have been a little worse. Who knows? Maybe somewhere else he might have even been a little bit better. But it's like you watch him play. You watch what he's looking at. Like when he's on the field and he's scanning the field, he's on the move. He's doing these incredible throws that you couldn't even imagine somebody doing. Like that kind of stuff isn't coached. That's just, I see this guy. I know I can get it there. I'm going to get it there. Because by that argument, you could say how much of Dan Marino was because of Don Shula?
Yeah,
or do we say that Dan Marino was just Dan Marino?
Well, obviously, it's got to be a mixture of both. I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes is only good because of Andy Reid. I'm just saying I think those things go together. And so I look at Burrow. Is he going to be successful with the staff in Cincinnati?
I don't know. Is that probably not? So I'm guessing no.
I only see two quarterbacks right now in this draft right now, and that would be Herbert or Burrow or Tua. You can throw Tua in that mix depending on his health. That, to me, are that attractive to the Dolphins. Because when you start talking about these guys like Love and Fromm, I just don't see them as being better prospects than Rosen. You know, what are they doing in college that Rosen didn't do?
Love makes throws that remind people of Mahomes. That's why people want to sit him down.
Did he have more interceptions than touchdowns this year, though?
Yes. I'm not sure because I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I don't watch college that closely.
I've seen a lot of talented quarterbacks.
No, yes, that's true. But that's true. I get that. But that's the thing, though, is that the idea is that he would be sitting down and learning. But when Jordan Love has had a lot of bad throws. But when you look at what he's done when he's really on, the name that comes to mind for people is not an accident. They think Patrick Mahomes because he does things apparently that you can't even believe he pulled it off. And that's even then, that's with a lot of his best weapons moving on from last season. Because that's the thing that a lot of people seem to forget is that Jordan Love is not playing with the same deck he had last year. Last year he was one of the top prospects, and this year he's kind of fallen off a little bit, but those weapons do come into play here. We have to take those things into account. The same way we would take into account for an NFL quarterback, we have to acknowledge it for a college one.
I think quarterback talent is of your arm. You have to have the arm talent to make the throws, but to make those unbelievable plays, more times than not, those are not great quarterbacks. Because, you can come up with plays that are amazing, but that's when something's broken down. So my question is, for those 2 or 3 plays where you need that exceptional talent to pull off, how efficient are you on the other 30 to 40 throws you make? Yes, Mahomes can do it, but Mahomes also plays really well in a normal route where the guy runs his route and he gets the ball on time and accurate. I don't see Jordan Love as somebody who's going to be a really efficient quarterback, and so I would rather take somebody who goes 25 of 30 and can't make as amazing of plays versus a guy that goes 15 of 30, throws a couple picks, but he has 2 highlight reel plays, just because he's super talented. I want an efficient quarterback that doesn't make mistakes and throws the ball where it's supposed to be accurately. And like I said, I don't know. I feel like this team's heading in the direction of maybe going with Rosen next year and Fitzpatrick again and not putting too much into a quarterback. If you can get Burrow, I'm not anti-Burrow, and he's a great prospect, but other than him and Herbert, I don't know that that any of those quarterbacks, as you start going further into the later round, first round or second round or third round, that you're getting anybody that's got a better upside than Rosen. That's all I'm saying is he did all those things successfully in college, like those guys did too. And it's a flip of a coin if those quarterbacks can make the jump to the speed and the complexity of the NFL. And it wouldn't shock me at all if Burrow doesn't make that jump, even though he's doing so well at LSU. It's a big jump, and so he may or he may not make it. And so I don't think no matter who they draft, this staff, I think that guy's sitting a full year. If they had Burrow or if they had Herbert or Tua or whoever it is, I think that quarterback's just going to set a year with this coaching staff. I don't think they like playing young guys. And I mean, they've made that apparent with Rosen, where we had this discussion at the beginning of the year. Yes, Fitzpatrick's the much more seasoned veteran and he knows what's going on a lot better than Rosen, but Rosen is supposed to, have the talent and be the future. And they took the direction of, we're going to develop Rosen on the practice field. We're not going to develop him on the game field. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But that's a question is, if these guys have been preparing Rosen, is that a smart use of resources to pick another guy to be behind Rosen versus beefing up the offensive line and giving him a real chance next year with a good team?
The Rosen thing is something to think about, because essentially what you're saying is, and I get it, is that Rosen is doing what I would have had a rookie quarterback doing in 2020. Sit down, learn, get your mental reps in, and we'll get you in there next year. I get that. And you and I know, we went back and forth at the beginning of the year, is that who should be the one to start? I was saying if Fitzpatrick won the competition, it should be him. If Rosen won the competition, it should be him. And I thought Rosen had won the competition, and I figured he should start. Well, I turned out to be wrong on that, but at the same time, you know what? In a strange roundabout way, I also turned out to be right, because here's the thing. Rosen could not have rallied this team the way they rallied around Fitzpatrick. I really don't think they could have. I really don't think he could have, because you see the swagger, you see the fun, you see the passion in Fitzpatrick's eyes. Rosen, I don't. And that matters. And I've come to realize that it matters. You have to be able to have this charisma that the team will follow you into battle every time. That you love the game so much that every time something goes incredibly right, or even if something goes wrong, then you just kind of like laugh it off and tell them, listen, don't worry about it, we'll get it next time. We got this, kind of an idea. Rosen, remember what it was reported about Rosen? That he pouts too much. Like when things go wrong, he beats himself up instead of trying to learn from it, almost. And that he needed to work on his attitude when he makes mistakes. That's something that I didn't think it was a big deal at the time. In fact, at the time, I actually thought it was Flores overreacting, because, like, when I make mistakes, I beat myself up. I do. And right. Chad, you know that I do. When I think I make a mistake, you know how I am. I'm just like, I can't believe I did this. I can't believe how dumb it was that I did so and so. I'm like that. And only now, in watching the difference between Rosen and Fitzpatrick, am I noticing the difference in how people respond to that reaction. Rosen, like that, could not have gotten these Dolphins to 5-11. Because they wouldn't have rallied around
I would
him
agree
like
with that. The question, though, is this staff, I feel, is different, this coaching staff. And so what I'm curious is, we're not going to get to see this until next year, is how much progress have they made with Rosen? And what have they turned him into? And if he's progressing along pretty well.
But what are you referring to, though? Are you referring to his leadership or his actual quarterback prowess?
All of it. I mean, leadership's important. Quarterback prowess is important. Is he reading faster? Is he able to get the ball out quicker? Is he going to be more efficient? And they've got to be putting a lot of time into him. And is he a lost cause or not? We don't really know that. But we're going to know that next year. I'm just simply making the point that I don't know that there's a whole lot better in terms of talent in this draft than Rosen if you start going past Burrow or Tua or maybe Herbert. If you're going to draft a quarterback after that, I'm just making the point: is that guy ahead or behind of Rosen right now for this team? And if you don't have that type of player, I don't think it's going to help us a lot to take a Fromm or a Love or somebody like that. If they're not even as good a quarterback as Rosen, because there aren't very many guys that can make it. That's why it's so important to get a stud quarterback. And I just look around the league, and if we use up one of those number one picks on a quarterback that's never going to be any more than a backup, I feel like we're moving the wrong direction. I would just roll with Fitzpatrick and Rosen next year, use as much of those draft picks to get quality linemen, and then maybe make a run at a quarterback the following year. But
so you wouldn't draft the developmental rookie at all?
I don't know. With Rosen being 22, I don't know that's. I want a starting quarterback. I don't want a developmental quarterback, and so I want somebody that's going to come in that can realistically be a franchise quarterback. And maybe the idea is you're doubling up. So if you get a Fromm or somebody like that, then you're thinking hopefully one of those two, between Rosen and Fromm, one of those two will take that step forward. But my gut feeling right now is I guess if you're asking my opinion, I would go with 3 quarterbacks personally. But my gut feeling right now is this team, it seems to me, pretty confident on just going with Rosen and Fitzpatrick again next year. That's kind of the vibe that I'm feeling.
Okay, so that's your gut feeling as what they will do. Now,
yes.
let's make Chad Ronnebaum the GM. What will you do?
If I'm the GM, I draft Tua. I don't know that I take in number 5 overall, but if he falls to wherever that Steelers draft pick is, that late teens, early 20s, I draft Tua. And I just put him in the room. I hope he can actually get recovered on the hip injury. And whether or not he is the guy or maybe Rosen becomes the guy, I just think the position is so important that's what I do. I'm not real big on Herbert. I don't think he's necessarily going to be a better quarterback than Rosen. I like Burrow. I just think the cost to get him is going to be too high. To get Burrow, you've got to get up to number 1 overall, and that's going to cost us 1 or 2 of our number 1 picks. And I don't know that it's worth that much assets to move up to go get him. And I kind of like maybe the quarterback situation next year even better.
Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and them.
Yeah, and so part of me is like, if we go a year and they should. By the end of next year, you would hope they have a really good idea on what they have in Rosen. If we use those 3 number 1 picks and we build the trenches on this team and get 1 or 2 offensive linemen and defensive linemen, we build the front on this team with what they've been doing under Flores. If we get a decent line, again, we had no running game at all, and it's pretty successful. So you give this coaching staff a decent offensive line, look out. That's all I can say is look out.
But you know what, though, Chad? Now, this is what we're going to close on because we're already up to an hour, so we're going to be short.
Sure.
Okay, so you're saying this, and I get it. But you're talking about the 2021 class. But if the idea is for 2020 to be the reload year, that we're going to get the offensive line fixed. Maybe we draft Tyler Biadasz out of Wisconsin, and he helps Michael Dieter become a good left guard again because those two were like the combo in college. Then you get a left tackle. You sign Brandon Scherf to be the right guard. Maybe Jesse Davis stays at right tackle, and between him and Scherf, it's a decent combo. But if you do all that, and then you draft a running back like a Jonathan Taylor maybe, or a J.K. Dobbins, or whoever you want to throw out there, and you still have your wide receivers, you still got Gesicki at tight end, and maybe they add someone else in free agency again, and you fix the defense. Byron Jones, he's the guy. Maybe you sign him to a big deal to be him and Xavier Howard. You get a safety. You get a couple extra pass rushers. You have that money. You might as well use it. And you do all that, and you combine it with this coaching staff. How confident are you, or should you even be confident in the first place, that the Dolphins would even remotely be in a position to draft Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields? Like, let's say they go with Fitzpatrick again. Then we still don't have a quarterback for the future, and if Rosen doesn't pan out, the Dolphins will have won too many games to get their hands on who it is they're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question that I think a lot of teams go through is do you have your quarterback or not? And to me, that the ultimate question is, to me, it isn't Fitzpatrick, it's Rosen. And what is he? And I would hope the coaching staff has a pretty good feel. I personally, just from the standpoint of the importance of the position, I would want to have Tua or Burrow, one of those two. Otherwise, I'm not feeling that concerned to use a higher pick on a quarterback. But maybe they've evaluated a guy they really like that we're not going to see coming. Maybe it's like all of a sudden it's like Eason is the guy that they really like from Washington State, and they're going to pick him in the 3rd round. I'm not against that. I mean, Tom Brady was a 5th round pick. I'm not against them getting a quarterback. I just don't know that there's quarterbacks in this draft other than maybe a Burrow or a Tua that to me have a higher potential coming out of college than what Rosen was showing. That was the only point I was making. Is I don't know that any of those other quarterbacks would be much higher rated in any of the draft than where Rosen was rated.
All right, fair enough. All right, so we're going to call it here. So thank you all so much for joining us for the Dolphins Brawl podcast. So that's going to be episode 2 for us, guys. So we're going to have a lot more coming for you. So stay tuned on that. You can follow us at Dolphins Brawl on Twitter. And also, this is part of the Brawl Network. So at the Brawl Network on Twitter as well. We're going to have a Facebook page. We got stuff going up on YouTube. And it's going to be up on all the podcasting sites out there. So make sure you're keeping an eye out for that. So we're going to go ahead and call it here. I'm Louis Sung, and this is my co-host Chad Ronenbaum, and we'll see you all next time. You have a great night.